She was a 12 o'clock dame in a 9 o'clock town. I knew what she needed. She needed to see the big cheese, the head honcho, the man with the plan. She needed to see Steve Hayes, the tired old queen at the movies.
Well, look who's here, John.
Tired old queen at the movies.
Johnny, we hadn't done a film noir in a while, and I decided to do one of the classic film noirs of all time, Jacques Tourneur's Out of the Past from 1946, starring Robert Mitchum, Jane Greer, and Kirk Douglas. This was Mitchum's first starring role at RKO. He had gotten an Oscar nomination for G.I. Joe, and he had sort of been working his way up at Metro. He went over to RKO, and they decided to give him a nice, big part. Now, Mitchum was always a bad guy. He was always, not a bad guy, a bad boy is the best way to put it. He was always kind of getting in trouble, and his whole style was sort of laconic. He put laconic on the map. His whole...
I'm not going to try. Okay.
This was Kirk Douglas's third movie. He had just done The Strange Love of Martha Ivers with Barbara Stanwyck, and at this point in his career he hadn't done Champion yet, which really made him a hero, and he was playing sort of slimy villains, and it was all Kirk Douglas could do to upstage Mitchum, because Mitchum was just such a presence, you know, and Kirk was always so on and so volatile.
We call it earning a living. You may have heard of it somewhere.
I may have, but it wasn't from you.
I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, Whit.
My feelings? About 10 years ago, I hid them somewhere and haven't been able to find them.
Essentially, the plot line is this. Robert Mitchum is an ex-private eye who's hiding out and running a gas station in a small town in Northern California. And he has this little mute guy, played by Dickie Moore, who's cute, who works for him. One day, this big henchman walks into town, this big gun guy, and he says he wants to see Mitchum.
The guy just wants to see you.
Well, you put it that way, what can I do?
And this is something from Mitchum's past. His girlfriend, played by Virginia Houston, who's the nicest girl in town, doesn't know anything about this. So Mitchum says, come on, we're going to take a ride. I've got to go see somebody at Lake Tahoe. He gets in the car and he starts up to drive to see this racketeer. And he begins to tell the story of his past.
I should have told you before. I meant to, but I kept putting it off.
Turns out he was in New York and he got hired by a guy named Whit Sterling, who's played by Kirk Douglas, to find Whit's girlfriend, played by Jane Greer, who has shot him and taken $40,000 and run away from him. He says he doesn't want the money back so much as he wants the girl, and he thinks he's tracked her to Mexico. So at the time, Mitchum has a partner, and the partner's kind of sleazy, and he leaves the partner out of it, and he goes to Mexico in search of this girl. And he finds her.
My name is Jeff Markham, and I haven't talked to anybody who hasn't tried to sell me something for 10 days. If I don't talk, I think.
Now, Jane Greer was this little Texas girl, and she had come to Hollywood, and she was adorable. She was just a great little powder puff. And at first they dyed her hair black. She kind of looked like Gail Sondergaard. Then they finally got her to lighten her hair, and she looked amazing. They gave her this part, and the director, Jacques Tourneur, said to her, in the first part of the movie, you're the good girl. In the second part, you're the bad girl. And instead of playing this part like the femme fatales usually did in film noir, like Barbara Stanwyck, she plays it like the girl next door. The sweetest girl next door. Apple pie, just adorable. Who kills people.
Here.
Hey, not so hard.
So Mitchum finds her, falls madly in love with her.
That'll dry your hair.
And they are discovered by his partner, who wants to cut in on the money and get her back to Kirk Douglas. She kills him. And leaves Mitchum to hold the bag and runs away. He hasn't seen her in a long time. He managed to talk his way out of it and go into hiding to this gas station. By the time he's finished with his story, telling it to his girlfriend, they've arrived at Kirk Douglas's house, and he goes in. And who's there but Jane Greer? She went back to Kirk Douglas.
You remember Kathy, don't you?
Yeah, I remember Kathy. Sit down.
So it's got the typical film noir convoluted plot.
Well, if you'll drop this junior league patter, we may get the conversation down where it belongs.
And the movie is stolen by Jane Greer. Jane Greer is so absolutely lethal in this part. And you can see why Mitchum, just falls for her and can't help it.
You're like a leaf that the wind blows from one gutter to another. You can't help anything you do, even murder.
There's sort of a underlying gay theme in this movie. Paul Valentine plays Joe, who's, the henchman of Kirk Douglas, and he's very overprotective and very solicitous. And there's sort of like an attraction there for him with Kirk Douglas, and even Kirk kind of acknowledges it here and there, never overtly, but it's sort of underlying through the whole thing.
Thanks.
It's non-stop action from beginning to end, and Mitchum is so charismatic. Douglas is just like a cock rooster. He's fighting to get that big chance, and you can see it. And Jane Greer is the coolest of the cool gals. Jacques Tourneur's classic film noir, Out of the Past. Ooh.
Let's all go to the lobby.
Every time Mitchum comes on, you go, oh! Kirk Douglas comes on, oh! Paul Valentine. Ooh. He's the pretty bear.
To get ourselves a treat.